Okay, guys, what does this episode mean for our show moving forward? I am very curious. This is kind of a hype episode, even though not much happened. It was kind of really hype. And it has a lot of very interesting implications moving forward. Like, you guys probably already know what I'm talking about, but when we get to a specific scene, we're going to dive into that a bit. I want to talk about that. What does this mean? I'm excited. I'm actually really excited going forward with The Eminence in Shadow today. Because if you guys haven't noticed, we're doing episode 17 today, and it's a pretty interesting episode, honestly. I'm excited, so let's just get straight into it and talk about The Eminence in Shadow, episode 17 today. So our episode today begins like I imagine every episode secretly begins in The Eminence in Shadow, with Sid thinking of catchy one-liners to tell people as he's kicking their ass. But it's here we see that Bulk is just banging on Sid's door, trying to get his attention again. He really hates Sid's door, by the way. And as Sid answers it, he tells him, "Sid, we're gonna strike it rich here. Look, Student Council President Rose is a wanted criminal. We can get 10 million zenny if we bring her in alive. Doesn't that sound great? Let's go catch her right now." As Sid asks him, I thought you were going to make a killing on that bet you just couldn't lose. As Bulk tells him, things didn't quite pan out. I'm broke, so I'm not going to go into all the reasons as to why, per se. But it's here Sid says, Bulk, the thing is, I'm in favor of her running away. She's a rebel that would try to kill a fiancé that she doesn't want to marry. That takes chutzpah. I really admire that. But it's here that Sid notices that his sister is here to come see him. So he does what any good brother would do in this situation. He puts his clothes on, look presentable. He grabs Bulk and jumps out the window to avoid her. Naturally. And it's here as we see Bulk and Sid going around looking for Rose. Sid's just pretending to look for Rose, as he says, "For now, I just need to buy some time while I wait for my sister to cool her head." This man just hates interacting with her, I swear. As he thinks to himself, I wonder if Rose managed to get away safe and sound. If I'd had my wish, I would have asked her in person what inspired her to do something so rock and roll as to stab her fiancé. Rock and roll, bro. But it's here as Sid's walking around. He suddenly hears something. And it happens to be the piano. As he says, "That's pretty good." And then he says, in my past life, as part of my family educational policy, I was forced to play the piano, as we saw in episode 1. Frankly, I would have much rather spent my time training to become the Eminence in Shadow. But after a while, I started thinking the piano's not so bad. Which, honestly guys, the piano is one of my favorite instruments. I know how to play it a little bit because it's actually a really nice instrument. As Sid says, when you get good at the piano, everyone around you starts to assume, oh, he's just practicing, and leaves you alone. As someone who wanted to keep friendly interactions to a minimum in my quest to be the Eminence in Shadow, I really appreciated that. But most of all, I simply realized that the piano is just really cool. It is, I agree. The Eminence in Shadow, playing the piano in the light of the moon. Awesome, right? Yes. It shows the world that I'm not just about pure power. I'm also an amazing artiste. The next thing I knew, I was pretty hardcore into the piano. And as Sid continues to walk, he realizes that the song he's hearing is Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 14. The Moonlight Sonata. A legitimately very famous piano song. As he says, it's my favorite piece. In fact, I love it so much, I think it's the only piece that could be considered the best piece for an Eminence in Shadow. But then Sid asks himself, wait, how does the Moonlight Sonata exist in this world? As he finds the place it's coming from, as he says, maybe there really is someone else who's been reincarnated here. But as Sid makes his way into the building, his face tells you everything you need to know, as he sees that it's actually Epsilon playing the piano. And to say he's disappointed seeing this is kind of an understatement. And when she finishes her performance, Sid thinks to himself, first Gamma, then Beta, now Epsilon. Everyone's becoming famous in Shadow Garden. And it's here we see that Sid actually goes backstage and talks with Epsilon after she's done with her performance, as she says, I never would have dreamed that you'd come to hear me play, my lord. As Sid asks her, that piece was the Moonlight Sonata, correct? As she says, yes. Of the many pieces you so graciously taught me, it was the one I like the very best. As Sid's just like, I didn't mean to teach you a damn thing. But I guess I can be pleased to hear someone else say she likes something I like. And it's here she tells Sid that the Oriana Kingdom, the kingdom of arts and literature, has invited me to visit as an up-and-coming composer. As she says, I'm sure you're aware, but there's a lot of profitable work to be done in the Oriana Kingdom right now. As Sid says, yeah, they are the kingdom of arts and culture after all. Duh. But it's here that Epsilon sneaks in something and says, this time, I think there's an especially worthwhile job to be done. And this piqued my interest a bit, but we won't talk about that right now. We'll come back to this, I'm sure. Because it's here that Sid actually asks Epsilon, like, do you happen to know where Oriana's Princess Rose ran off to? As Epsilon tells him, Beta's responsible for that particular case, so I don't know any details on it. But I have heard that she's taken refuge in the tunnels under the royal capital. As Sid says, underground, huh? As he gets up and says, alright, you've given me all I need to know, Epsilon. And as Sid leaves the room, as he's walking down the hallway, he looks down and notices a piano and gets a shit-eaten grin on his face. And this will lead to a really epic scene, actually, later on. But we'll come back to that scene, because it's here we transition to Alexia and Beta actually looking for Rose, as we hear, my sister Iris thanks you for the information you provided. As Alexia says, so it turns out I was right. We should assume that Perv Asshat is working with the cult. As Beta says, yes, if we follow his dubious personal history, I believe there's no room for doubt. As Alexia says, the problem is, we have no evidence. This matter involves the government and the church, so normal evidence will not be enough. Even Father broke his usual silence to give me a stern warning. He's all, if you want to tie the divine teachings to the cult of Diablos, you're going to need to convince all our people and the neighboring governments. Huh, fathers, am I right? As Beta says, and if they brand us all as heretics, it's all over for us. As Alexia says, how in the world does my father plan to put a stop to all the chaos the cult of Diablos has caused? As Beta responds, I believe he plans to ignore it, as he always has, throwing some subtle shade. As Alexia says, he always has, huh? And Beta says, forget I said anything. As Alexia lets the snide comment go, as she says, anyway, Iris said something that's been bothering me. She had an audience with King Oriana, but he seemed somewhat vacant. As she says, normally it would make sense that he'd be distracted by his daughter's act of violence. But Iris says it wasn't like that, and apparently there was a sweet smell. As Beta tells her, it may already be too late. And it's here that Beta finally asks her, like, where do these stairs lead, by the way? As Alexia responds, to an entrance to the royal capital's underground passages. As she says, all the maps, keys, codes, and everything were lost a long time ago. So now it's nothing but a giant maze. As Beta asks her, have you told anyone about what you're doing? And Alexia says, why would I tell anybody? They would literally just try to stop me. As Beta asks her, how can you be sure we'll make it back out? As Alexia says, we just gotta come back the way we came in, right? Easy peasy. As Alexia says, if you have a problem with it, you can leave. As Beta's gotta tell herself, alright, babysitting is part of the job, Beta. Deep breaths, deep breaths. And you guys know what I'm gonna say already. I love Alexia. She's so great. I really love her in this show. As the show has progressed, she's just like a female Sid to me. And I just kind of love it. She's not as strong as him, obviously, but she just gives off the same kind of energy as Sid. Just all the time now. And it always just makes me so happy. They both give off the same, I don't give a shit kind of attitude. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I love it. But it's here we transition to what happened with Oriana previously in our season. Why she's in this situation. We get our answers on that. As she says, what was I supposed to do back there? As we transition to her meeting with her father and Perv Asshat. And she immediately knows something's up with her father. As she sees the shit-eaten grin on Asshat and the royals around her. And in her rage, she actually does stab Asshat. But it's at this moment that everyone in the room says, Princess Rose has gone mad. And we realize that it was a setup from the beginning. As Rose says, at the time, I thought I had made a rational decision. If I could have settled the matter then and there, we could have treated it all as a domestic affair within the Oriana kingdom. And as we see her running from her kingdom's own soldiers, we hear Asshat scream, turn yourself in before the Bushin festival is over. Otherwise, I'll make your father kill one of our other guests of honor. As we see that on top of being a perv and an asshat, he's scum as well. As she says, but what I did was not a rational thing to do. I wanted to protect them, my one and only father, my one and only homeland. As she slumps down and asks herself, if I do manage to get away, what then? I'm hurting the knights of my own kingdom, pointlessly making the problem worse. Maybe I should just turn myself in. But then she notices the wrapper that Sid gave her and recalls her conversation with him previously where he said that he would believe in her no matter what happened. But it's here we see that her pain intensifies as she says, in reality though, I'm possessed. None of my dreams were ever meant to come true. But it's here something interesting happens. As we hear the piano start to play, and we realize it's the Moonlight Sonata. And it's here we see Rose goes and investigates the piano playing, because you don't typically hear the piano playing underground in some tunnels. And as she walks into this one room, feathers flying everywhere, she is shocked by what she sees, as we see Shadow sitting there playing the piano. And you know, I bet a lot of you thought that Sid was joking when he says that the Moonlight Sonata is the perfect song to play for The Eminence in Shadow. But that was not a joke. This scene is strangely hypnotic. It is a very well done scene. It's extremely good. I really like it, actually. It's super fitting. He was so right. And as he finishes playing, he asks Rose flat out, what do you hope to accomplish? As Rose answers, I wanted to protect them, but I couldn't. And Shadow says, and you would let it end there? You would put down your sword and stop fighting? As she says, it's not like I wanted it to end this way. I wanted to win the brightest future for everyone. As Shadow says, if you have any desire to keep up the fight, I will give you power. As Oriana says, if I use that power, will I be able to change the future? As Shadow tells her, that depends on you. As Rose says, I am the Princess of Oriana, and as such there are things that I have to do. As Rose Oriana, there are hopes that I have to keep alive, and I want the power to achieve that. As we see Sid actually give her power, and we see that the possession goes away. As he says, rise up, and prove to me that you are willing to keep up the fight. Never forget, true strength lies not in one's power, but in one's way of being. Legitimately wise words for once. As Shadow disappears from the scene. So what does this scene mean? He gave her power, so does that mean that she's an unofficial member of Shadow Garden now? That's what I want to know after doing this. Like, is she technically, he didn't officially, like, bring her in, but she's technically an unofficial member now, right? So I really want to know, like, where do we go from here? What does this mean moving forward? I'm very, very curious to know what this means. But it's here all of a sudden, in typical anime fashion. After a character gets a power-up, we gotta demonstrate that power. As Rose, actually very randomly gets attacked by these cult members, as she says. So you're a part of the cult of Diablos, huh? As they all attack her, and she effortlessly takes them out. It's crazy. She got a hell of a power-up. She's way stronger now. As she says, Shadow, he's a ray of moonlight that pierces the darkness. After this scene, I'm even more curious to know where we go from here. She's an unofficial member, right? I really think so at this point. As we see, it starts raining blood on her from all the people she just took out. But it's here we transition back to Alexia and Beta, because they felt that huge blast of energy that just happened right there. So they're running towards it. And it's here that they actually run right into Rose, as Alexia asks her, what was that burst of magic just now? But she walks past her, not saying a word, except for, I have obtained power. I will follow the path I believe in, as Beta looks on because she knows what just happened. She can tell. As Rose tells Alexia, I don't want to drag you into this. As Alexia demands that she answers her questions, but Rose just looks at her and says, if I tell you, you will get dragged into this. And Alexia gets pissed off hearing that, as she says, back at the sanctuary, we promised each other. If we're never more than spectators, someday we'll lose everything we care about. That's why we promised each other that we'd protect those things together. So how can you talk to me like this? Do you think I'm only good at being a spectator too? As Rose says, there's no turning back for me now. And I envy you. I've lost a number of things already. And I'm going to lose more. Everyone will reject me. Denounce me as evil. As Alexia tells her, so what? But she still tells her, I have to go. As Alexia says, fine. If you won't give me the answers, I'll force them out of you, as she actually attacks Rose. As Alexia says, I'm not just a spectator anymore, as they take their fight up to the next level. And I gotta say, I kinda love the fact that Beta's just quietly watching this happen, as we see Rose carrying Alexia. As we know how their battle ends, as she says, Alexia, when did you get to be this strong? But she still lost. As Rose says, Mitz Natsumi, I have to go. As Beta tells her, I won't try to stop you. I don't have the right to stop you. But I am a little surprised. I suppose even fools try in their own foolish way to find the best solutions. We each have different nationalities, different affiliations, different creeds. But maybe the ideals we strive for are the same. It's possible that this alliance of ours wasn't such a bad idea after all. As she says, I suspect our paths will cross again before too long. And as Rose runs off, Beta asks herself, is this what you've chosen, Lord Shadow? And I kind of really like this scene because I kind of feel like they're genuinely becoming friends in their own weird way. It's kind of strange, but the situation that they're in has kind of made them all closer together. So I think they're genuinely starting to become friends a little bit, which is kind of funny in its own way. And it's here as we transition to our next scene. We see that Sid just stole the piano from this place. They're like, damn, where'd the piano go? I got no idea, guys. Someone took it in broad daylight? How weird. As Sid's just like, a melody that echoes through the darkness. The words that spring like a song from the mouth of the Eminence in shadow. I think that encounter went quite well. I always knew the piano was an excellent set piece. But as Sid makes it home, he sees that Claire was waiting for him all day. She's a little pissed off as Sid realizes, oh, I'm screwed, as our episode ends. And man, this was actually a really interesting episode for the foreseeable future of the show. Again, what does that mean for Oriana? Clearly her possession was cured from Sid. We know he can do that, but is she an unofficial member of Shadow Garden now? I don't know. I'm very curious. And I think Alexia did get done a little bit dirty today, but it makes sense given the context that Rose just got a power up that she would stomp her. But I'm very, again, extremely curious to know where we go from here. So you guys let me know what you think down below. This episode was strangely hyped, man. It makes me want to play the piano. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And until then, deuces, have a blessed day. And why don't you guys go learn to play the piano? It's an excellent set piece. I'll see you guys next time.